So a very warm welcome to everyone. This is the launch of Flints and Flashes, Volume 1 by Nicholas Tresilian. We're delighted to have everyone here today to celebrate this wonderful achievement. And we've got various people joining us live, and we're really thrilled to have everyone. So we've got a lovely program. We're going to start with a few words with our author, Nicholas, and then hear some readings and some extracts from Flints and Flashes. And if we have time, we would love to hear your thoughts, comments, special requests and questions at the end. So I'm going to hand over to my darling siblings, Susanna and Alexander, who are together. And I think Susanna's got some questions for you, darling Dad.
Hello. Gosh, Dad, what an honour. Hold on. What an honour to be able to speak with you on, and interview you for your book launch. Firstly, how are you feeling?
Well, wonderfully nervous, of course. I've never seen so many people on a screen at once. So, and a bit dashed because I haven't got my gay whisper to slap on my face. But you'll have to take me as I am. It was good luck.
I feel we ought to tell people that this is makeup that you're talking about, Dad. Like, let's just give a little context to an age-old family joke. But yes, it is makeup.
It came in a nice little bowl like that.
And you slapped it on with abandon. Yes,
that's right.
We did. So, darling Dad, here we are to talk about Volume 1 of Flints and Flashes. Let's start by talking about the title, Flints and Flashes. Where does that idea originate from? What does it mean for you?
Well, the title is a theft, but it's a tribute also, because it was the title of a book of a slim volume of verse by a wonderful old 19th century, really Edwardian age poet called E.H. Vizier, known to us as Vizzy. And he was introduced to me by my lifelong friend, Noel White. He was a sort of father figure to us both. We used to go up, his life began at about 10 in the evening. He woke up then, and we go up to his flat in Hove, high up at the top, and with a bottle of hock, and so leave about 4 in the morning, completely talked out. Stagger off home. And he was a tremendous life force, and all sorts of strange things happened to him. He was incarnated by, if this is the right expression, he was inhabited by Milton. He actually he edited the collected poems of Milton for the Nonsuch Press. And there was one particular scholar's delight in it. The line was, frighted steeds. It's a line in Comus, or a phrase in Comus by Milton. And it's a real scholar's sort of picnic. And can it be frighted steeds? Can steeds be frighted? Or was it a misprint for freighted? So he left it right to the end. And then finally he wrote down freighted. He took the conservative view. And he lay back on his writer's daybed, and I hope all writers here have one. And just as he was drifting off to sleep, a very angry voice said to him, frighted steeds, you fool. So he got up and altered it and put in the footnote amended by the author and sent it off to Nonsuch Press. But they wouldn't take the footnote, which was a great shame. But anyway, he wrote, amongst other things, published this small volume of Flints and Flashes, which Susanna then found a copy of many, many years later and bought me. And so I've stolen the title because it really fits the sort of pattern of reminiscence that has afflicted me over these recent years, some of the results of which are in this, but there are many more to go.
Well, yes,
yeah.
You start the preface with the phrase "memory is a tease." Presumably, is that something to do with with how you've written these specific anecdotes, because you are also writing your life story, and we've also got these anecdotes for Flints and Flashes, and there is at least another volume's worth that are coming. Tell us more about your relationship with memory. Why is it a tease?
Well, what happens is that things drop into the memory, and I have to get out my phone and say to it very severely, Siri, take a note, and dictate the note. And then Siri repeats it back to me, usually misspelled. In that case, I've got it. But if I think, oh, that's a good one, I'll wait 5 minutes. Somebody says something and it's gone from my mind and I've lost it. So it is a tease. But every time I get one of these, I see one of these images, I grab it when I can, slam it in my phone, and then it's one of an enormous list now, which I'm gradually working my way through. So other volumes are due. But in parallel, I'm also trying to write my life history in a more coherent way, based on all the houses we've lived in, of which there were an awful lot when you count all the sort of dwellings I had overseas in temporary bases and so on and so forth. And I think we've got 30,000 words of that written. But we don't know quite how to, well, I'm going on with it at any rate. But the Flints and Flashes are all the stories that I couldn't fit into the grill between, particularly in latter years, I've been running a television company, Sparfax Television, a radio company, GWR, classic broadcasting for Classic FM, and living as a fourth life in art history. So where all these stories fit in, I couldn't possibly tell you. I haven't got the grid constructed. So they're just here in a rush, the first lot of them, and they sort of occur randomly. But there is a little bit of a preface which gives a sort of idea of where they vaguely fit in, these many impressions. But I mean, they're there because I just lived a very lucky life, with wonderful family, wonderful age of expanding world and expanding freedom and expanding travel, all of which is rather under shadow now. But I wanted to capture it before it all disappeared into memory.
And just very quickly, Dad, you've had two very important capturers in your life. I'd like to say, are they memoirs? I can't pronounce it. Anyway, you'll be able to. You've had Siri on the one hand, and you've had Joe Charrington on the other, both of whom have captured beautifully what you've managed to, dream up and dictate. And what's it been like as somebody who spent their entire life writing? What's it been like to dictate your work?
Paradise. Wonderful, wonderful, much better. But I'm very, very lucky. Years and years ago, Penguin appointed me some secretaries to help in the very, very early days of the art historical work. None of them could spell, none of them understood what I was talking about. Jo is quite the opposite. She laughs at my jokes, she encourages me to go on, and she takes dictation like a sort of streamlined aircraft. She's really terribly, terribly good and awful fun to work with. And I'm full of thanks for her, because she's inspired and spirited, as much as Joanna, who's sat behind me and encouraged me to go on and keep babbling. So I am. So I have wonderful support and wonderful support of my family, who've come together to make this volume possible, including the great designer, Graham Saunders, who really has produced the most lovely job. And so I feel very, very privileged, very, very well supported, and I'm determined to go on as long as life allows, and many more there should be.
Well, darling Dad, shall we hear some of these incredible and beautiful and wonderful anecdotes? Thank you so much. I'm going to hand you back to Arabella now. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Susanna. So, darling Dad, your opportunity to hear some of your stories it's not easy for you to read them because of your visual difficulties, and it's our delight to read some of them to you. Now, one of them is going to be extremely fresh in your own memory because you actually wrote it for us this morning, and it's a Christmas spirited one in more than one way, I would say. And dear Joanna, our much adored stepmother, mother, adored wife of our father, Joanna, please would you kick us off with reading this morning's creation? Thank you.
With pleasure. Thank you, Arabella. There was a moment Nicholas bounded out of bed, bounded his 2 eggs, and bounded across the courtyard into his beach hut and dictated to Joe this anecdote, which is not in the book, but it's called Living Cribs in Chocolate and Other Media. Spain celebrates the full 12 days of Christmas, eating shellfish after midnight mass, treating Christmas Day itself as a shopping day, and reserving its main celebration for Los Reyes, the arrival of the 3 kings on the 12th night, greeted with fireworks as they ride into the village, showering the children from baskets of wrapped sweets. In addition, Spain has its own unique way of celebrating Christmas Eve, the Bella Vivante, in English, the living crib. These can be edible. The world's biggest chocolate living crib is advertised annually at the town of Ruta in Andalusia, which also boasts museums of anise, nougat, ham and sugar, a world destination for culinarily curious. Our own village of Las Pinedas had its own version of the living crib, which it celebrated on Christmas Eve. A large bar would be arranged across the end of the Plaza Andalusia, with the refrigerators plugged into the mains through the kitchen window of our house, Casa Uno. As the beer and the fino chilled for lunchtime, preparations would begin on an immense paella fired by gas from large and rather dangerous-looking bombs, and stirred by strong men with stout paddles as the rice, fish, chicken and saffron bubbled and blended. On the far side of the square, a pair of ancient hay carts would materialize, and beyond them, a young man on a tractor-drawn farm cart, shoveling cardboard loaves out of a cardboard oven. But the central attraction was the tent of the Virgin Mary, known to us all as Pepe, the bread lady, for her regular visits with delicious fresh bread every morning of the week. On her knee, she held a large plastic baby Jesus from the range advertised in quantity each year by the local ironmonger. Joseph knelt beside her, sporting on his head what looked like an upturned mop head of thick golden plaits, possibly from the same ironmonger's store. Then, one year, tragedy struck. The bread lady was the wife of a passionate hunter of wild boar, the kind of super patriarch who covers the walls of his entrance hall with sets of boar's teeth mounted on heraldic shields, not her husband to be trifled with. Then news crept out from our neighbouring market town of La Carlota that the bread lady had fallen for the local mayor, and that the couple had been identified coming hand in hand out of the Truckers Hotel at an inappropriate time of the afternoon. As a consequence, the unlucky bread lady lost her husband, her job, and her quasi-divine status, leaving a new mother of God to be found for the plasticated baby Jesus for the following year. Soon afterwards, COVID arrived, and the future of the living crib at Las Pinedas now remains uncertain. As for the new bread lady appointed to the village, she wasn't nearly so good.
Thank you so much, Joan. A sobering tale for us all. Wonderful. So hot off the press, thanks for that. Well, we're next going to go to Dorothy and Norman, who have a short and pithy but rather deep one that they might share with us. Hi, Dorothy, darling.
Want to say hello?
Hello.
Hello, it's lovely to see you. Can you see your mummy? Give Susanna, give her a wave. Mummy, hi.
Mama.
Oh gosh. So Dorothy, I think you and Dada are going to do something about Siri, because there's a real paradox about Siri, isn't there, when you give Siri a certain instruction. So Norman, over to you.
Oh, we'll do it in a second. All right, Siri's paradox. When I tell Siri to turn on the torch, it says, the flashlight is on.
Flashlight is on.
Can you say it louder?
A flashlight is on.
Wow, what? And when I tell Siri to turn off the flashlight, it says, say the torch is off.
Oh, sister.
The torch is off.
Very
Dorothy,
true.
that's just extraordinary.
Well done. What a
Someone's going
book
to have to talk to Siri about that. Norman, bless you. Thank you both so much. That was perfect. Well, now we turn to darling Eliza, who just gave us an enormous amount of help with just proofreading and bringing in her exquisite use of commas and punctuation in particular.
Bless you, Eliza. It's so good to be well punctuated.
So Eliza, darling, if you'd like to unmute and just tell us the stories you're going to read. And with Walter and Malachi, her gorgeous sons, or two of the three.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm slightly worried that you can hear. There's a lot of background noise.
It's fine.
Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Are you picking it up?
A little bit, but we know it's all in a good cause.
So it gives me great pleasure to read from Flints and Flashes. Thank you for inviting me to do so. Page 33. Love strafing. The new age of peace had other ways of making itself known too. Our Chellaston house was on a hill, the very last house in the great conurbation of Derby. On its roof was a decorative pattern of highly visible green diamonds. It proved an irresistible target for my father's test pilot friends at Rolls-Royce. Long after the war was ended, the peace at Chellaston would be shattered by the howl of a Spitfire or the scream of a twin-jet meteor fighter doing imaginary dive bombing runs over our house. It was many years later before it occurred to me that these imaginary bombs were in fact love bombs, and that the test pilots were all of them actually flirting with my very pretty mother, who never ceased to be delighted by the uproarious tribute paid her. Uncle Tony. One of those low flyers was a very special friend of all of us. Tony Martindale had survived the Battle of Britain to become a senior flight instructor, training successor generations of fighter pilots in that statistically most dangerous of all trades during World War II. Tony became a very special friend to me. Seeing I had a single, small, wartime scale Meccano set, my initial training and ground for training in engineering, he arrived on the next occasion with a large sack full of pre-war Meccano cogs, wheels, axles, gears, and even an exciting though dysfunctional Meccano motor, a donation which vastly increased the machines I could build, and did more than any other stimulus offered me in later life to bind me into the delights of engineering. In real life, my Uncle Tony was a genuine ace. Once, in a fit of enthusiasm, he tipped his Spitfire into a dive from a great height over London and flew it until the speedometer recorded a speed of over 400 miles per hour and the propeller itself came off. With sublime skill, he pulled his aircraft out of the dive and glided it, slowly losing height, until he could find a safe landing field at a fighter aerodrome on the edge of London. And there he made a perfect landing on the belly of his plane, saving his own life and preserving the fuselage and engine for repair. Later, my parents reported to me that Tony had died, test flying during the early attempts to break the sound barrier, then conceived as a dangerous mission, and now so commonplace that pilots have to be banned from doing it over land. However, on Google, his death is now recorded as from an unspecified illness. But then, perhaps, That is the Official Secrets Act, talking still.
Thank you so much, darling Eliza. That was perfect. And I noticed that you too broke the sound barrier in the background there. That was lovely. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Beautifully read.
It really was, really was. Dear Ian, who also helped us so very much with proofreading. Thank you so much. Your immaculate English as well. And you and Eliza worked as a sort of tag team, kind of checking and rechecking each other's work. And we know you put so much into it, both of you. Thank you. So dear Ian, I think you're reading Bolzano.
It was an absolutely pleasurable task. There were delicious words and a great pleasure. This one is called Bolzano. A high point during my years expanding the interests of British commercial radio in Central Europe was the acquisition of a radio station in Bolzano, in the German-speaking High Tyrol. The station itself was operated from within Austria, but its main output was delivered from icy transmitters perched on perilous peaks in the Austrian mountains. Here's an aside from the narrator. Note the delicious alliteration of perched on perilous peaks. This is why it's such a delight to read Tresilian's work. To continue, at that time, the station was owned by a big Italian media tycoon who had bought the Bolzano studios as a toy for his 20-year-old son. The son was already disenchanted by the responsibilities of the radio station and had been given permission to sell it to us. However, on the day of my visit, he got cold feet and refused to do the deal. No matter, his father, the tycoon, had appointed him a minder, the rugged engineer whose job it was to position transmitters on the icy Tyrolean peaks. The engineer sent the boy out of the room, explained it was a done deal, and invited me downstairs to the basement of his building for lunch. We had lunch surrounded by every variety of mountain transmitter and aerial, washed down by a bottle of excellent white wine from the vineyard, which the engineer shared with the tycoon in Italy. As we were finishing lunch, a number of middle-aged gentlemen walked into the cellar and disappeared down a staircase which led to a still lower level in the building. The joyous clicking noises of a table football game arose from the staircase, along with many undeleted Italian expletives. Presently, I was taken downstairs to meet the visitors. There, around the table football, were grouped the director of the city bank, the head of police, the mayor, the head librarian, the director of transport for the city, and several other notables, or, in short, the entire Bolzano establishment, playing boyish games together. It seemed, had still not changed much since Mussolini's day. In signing up to take possession of the Bolzano license, I had, for the only time in my life, to sign an anti-mafia declaration. Interestingly, this required a detailed schedule of all the shareholders who held stakes in my company, GWR Radio Group. Our principal shareholder was the Daily Mail. It was never made plain to us whether young Lord Rothermere made a clean breast of his myriad shareholdings to the Italian government. Our reasons for buying into the Bolzano station were to gain a place in the wider competition for potentially very lucrative radio licenses in Austria itself. This turned out to be several political steps too far for an English radio station. My main memory of the event was of being subtly cheated by the notario, in most other countries, the one recognizable feature of absolute probity. Some kind of deal had been going on between the notary and the underlying owner of the Austrian station that formed part of our venture. Perhaps, had the notary not cheated us, the deal might have proceeded smoothly to its next stage, which would have been the acquisition of a radio station on Lake Garda, that most beautiful of all the Italian lakes. notwithstanding my contribution to Classic FM, I would have considered a directorship of a company in Lake Garda the very peak of my career. Indeed, I might never have come back.
Well, there was good fortune in the end on that one. Dear Ian, thank you. And dear Felicity, so lovely to see you both. Well, next, it's to darling Graham. Hi, Graham. So Graham is responsible, is my beloved, and also is responsible for the design of this beautiful book. He designed it and typeset it and kind of gave us the readiness to bring it to publication. I should say also Ian was our Kindle publishing, Amazon publishing consultant. So between Ian and Ian's guidance and Graham's beautiful design and hard work on that, we have the book in hand. So Graham, you're going to read Night with the Everly Brothers.
I am. I shall let's see if I can
Hell, shame.
find where we are. Right, I'm not in Zoom anymore, but hopefully you can still see and hear me.
We can.
Yep.
A Night with the Everly Brothers. I saw this and it tickled me. I think it's wonderful. During my time at Southern Television, when I shared a flat with my beloved friend Michael Alexander, we became good friends with the manager of the local Odeon cinema. One night, he tipped us off that there was a remarkable live show displacing the films at the Odeon the following week. We agreed to meet for an early dinner at the Indian restaurant opposite. The show was already underway by the time we arrived to find our seats. On stage were the Everly Brothers, a rock couple from the USA and a new sensation. As they belted out Bye Bye Love and Kathy's Clown, girls screamed, girls fainted. Girls were carried out of their seats overhead and dumped outside the doors to recuperate. The cacophony of besotted young women virtually drowned out the music. We gave it a few minutes and then returned to our second course at the Indian restaurant and missed the second act altogether. That missed second act turned out to have been a new band called The Beatles, live on stage at one of their first ever appearances in the UK.
Alas.
Bravo.
Darling Dad, you're always just that step ahead of the curve. That was the thing. Thanks, darling Graham. Beautiful. Susanna, over to you. Now, I should say that Susanna played a huge part in editing and sort of drawing together and proofreading and all sorts of things as well. So, darling Susanna, you are going to read French Tease.
I am. Right. French Tease. My engineering father, Stuart, was the youngest of 3 children at White Lodge, where his father, Frederick, was senior doctor in Enfield. It was Stuart's mild misfortune to be the younger brother of 2 older and rather bossy sisters, Noni and Kitty, both with a passion for the French language. During my father's childhood, the sisters would quite frequently pull rank and insist on French teas, the French language being spoken throughout the tea ceremony. My not very linguistic, but brilliantly mathematical father set little store by these grim festivals, and I never heard him speak a word of French in later life. But Kitty, in particular, remained a passionate aficionado of the French language. Once, during my 16th year, when I was doing an exchange with a dentist's family in the Avenue Bosquet, she arrived unannounced for a French tea with my French family. She positioned herself in the middle of the sofa, opened her knees squarely, giving a flash of her British utility knickers, and announced to the whole room with a perfect English accent, "Mon cœur et mon estomac sont à Paris." An astonished silence followed. Later in her life, as a doctor in Barnet, Kitty acquired a magnificent library of French literature, all the classics from the poems of Ronsard to the novels of Stendhal and Balzac. On retirement into a nursing home, she gave the entire magnificent library to me. It turned out to be completely unusable. Whenever Kitty had to look up a word in the dictionary, she had underlined it and written the translation in the margin. Far from aiding legibility, these inscriptions completely destroyed one's train of thought. In the end, I sadly had to give virtually the entire library away at a village fete. But Kitty did cling on to one big volume of French literature, which she kept as a talisman to the end of her life, The Life of Tolstoy by Henri Troyat. I have never been able to bring myself to read it, neither in French nor in English. The emotional weight that Kitty placed on that book to the end of her life was too much for this individual to bear. "I've got my Tolstoy with me," she used to say contentedly, patting it each time I visited her in the nursing home where she spent her final days. The much battered volume was still on her bedside table on the night this courageous old lady died.
Bravo.
Thank you.
And what a lady too. Yeah, lovely.
Well, she educated you all, apart from anything else.
She did. And Aunt Kitty was one of the first women GPs in the country, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So we're going to move on to, we've been into sort of deep intellectual culture, and Zander, who is the voice of modern culture, has been granted the delight of reading Naked Lunch. So beloved bro, over to you.
Thank you. And I must admit, this is the last time I ever messaged you guys privately saying how hysterical it was to read my dad talk about this. And now I'm reading it all to you, which is what you'll see why quite soon, but it is a brilliant tale, and actually obviously very close to my heart. So, Naked Lunch. Many years ago, there was a sweet little television program on ITV. Blind, daring for its time, it was hosted by the deeply respected and revered Cilla Black, once part of the Beatles generation of singing Liverpudlians. In the course of the program, a girl sat on the stage and asked various leading questions of three men, invisibly behind a wall. Eventually, Cilla would kindly coerce her into making a choice between the three men, and the shy winner would come round from behind the wall in whatever was the currently cool costume for the trendy male. The couple would be introduced to each other and sent off as an item to a luxury hotel in some more or less exotic resort, where what they got up to would be left entirely to the lubricious imagination of the audience. Some programs later, the lucky couple would reappear at the tailpiece of the current program to give feedback on what actually had gone on during their mystery weekend. Their answers were invariably guarded. The whole thing was really rather chaste. If you did not object to a boy and a girl going off on a random date together where, from the later feedback, sometimes they had and sometimes they hadn't done whatever it was the audience had been hoping they would do, that is life. Spool on some 25 years to a civilization that, of course, greatly advanced in the meantime. This time, there is a new dating program. Its title is Naked Attraction. There is, once again, a lady compere, and there, on this occasion, only two young male contestants. The difference is, there is no wall concealing them, and they are both stark. mysterious cosmetic feature that their pubic hair had been removed, presumably to reduce the shock. As before, there was a girl who was going to make a choice between them. She too was wheeled in, stark naked, positioned face to face in front of the two boys. The boys muttered vague remarks about the appreciation of tits. The lady compere pointed to the girl's pubic hair and suggested that they were neglecting the ultimate prize, which she called the vagina. Of course, the more educated amongst us know that she was really talking about the vulva. The girl stared as gormlessly as the two boys as they had stared at her, and finally decided the one on the right looked more of a cheeky chappy. So was her choice. Flashed forward footage followed, in which the young couple were sharing a rather self-conscious drink in an unnamed restaurant and not being very successful at conversation. In a second sequence, they were filmed at the foot of the staircase of the hotel bedrooms, with the girl wondering to camera what was going to happen next. There followed a slow fade to a new picture of the girl, now heavily overdressed and weeping bitterly, her hands over her face. Whatever had gone on between her and the cheeky chappy, he was now refusing to return her calls. It was not exactly the story of Adam and Eve, but it satisfied the needs of Channel 5. Thank you, Dad.
And now
Thank you.
Eliza's boys have to disappear then.
Thank you so much, darling bro. That, you know,
Shocking.
it's
Shocking,
shocking,
exactly.
isn't it? We should have given an age warning. There's Walter thinking, what world have I been born into? I can only apologize and suggest that you keep the television off, Walter, is the advice. But good to know, Dad, that you've been, you know, ensuring that you've been keeping, as ever, ahead of the curve. I particularly enjoyed watching your granddaughter's faces. Anna Sophia, her eyebrows sort of raising, and Lucia very much enjoying it. Well, what a great intro to your two eldest granddaughters, my gorgeous kids, Anna Sophia and Lucia. Anna, you are going to read Flying First Class on Egypt Air. So over to you, my darling.
Thank you. I have no idea how I'm going to follow that last story, but I will try my best. So, Flying First Class on Egypt Air. My grateful client, an international tobacco company, was in the habit of flying us first class when we travelled around the world, observing the many ingenious ways in which cigarettes were marketed to strange populations. So a first class seat was waiting for me on an Egypt Air flight at Cairo Airport to fly me back to London Heathrow. My seat was just beside the open front door to the first class area. While I sat there waiting for takeoff, a large Egyptian fly came in through the door, buzzed a bit, looked around a bit, and decided to join our flight. Soon after the door clanged shut, the engine started up, and away we flew to England. We landed safely at Heathrow. After a while, the rolling stairs were moved up to the doors of the plane, and the front door was flung open. While we were awaiting our instructions to disembark, the same fly appeared from the middle of the plane and flew out through the door into the cool grey air of London Airport. I have often wondered what its experiences thereafter were. How did it cope with our chilly English weather? Did it find an English mate? How did it overcome the cultural differences? Did it really enjoy English food? Was it plucked out of the sky no sooner than it reached the airport fencing by one of the squadron of screaming British Swifts? Or did it buzz cheerfully along, find its way through the open window of an English kitchen and come to happy rest on a piece of bread, a slice of bacon, or a pat of butter? It would take a Scheherazade to tell the tale.
Wonderful.
Well, beautifully, thank you.
Thanks, darling Anna. And over to Lucia, and you're going to tell a story which you feature in.
Thank you. I would like to take a second just to thank all of our wonderful narrators. I have two new kittens and they have fallen asleep with Nicholas's beautiful words at the mouths of all of these wonderful, wonderful people. So let me add to the beautiful people. I'll do my best at least. So this is an extract from A Not Altogether Haunted Vicarage. One curious thing did happen to me at the old vicarage, however. My daughter Susanna was staying in the house, and my granddaughter Lucia had come for the day. That's me. Lucia said to me, "Let's go and find Susanna in the garden." We went out of the back door, round the little yard outside the kitchen and onto the lawn. "There she is," said Lucia, said I. Both of us saw a girl with golden long hair, like Susanna's, sitting on the lawn with her back against the stone wall, reading a book. I say we both saw her, which we certainly did. To greet her, Lucia went to the right and I went round a large lime tree, momentarily breaking my line of sight. When I came round the tree, there was nobody sitting there. I wondered if we had caught some glimpse of a long ago vicar's daughter, just living in that house as it ought to be lived in on a beautiful summer's day. Given what we nowadays know about the infinite complexity of our universe at every level, from the crazy cosmic curvatures of general relativity to the spooky actions at a distance of the quantum, it has never been altogether a surprise to me that the universe should sometimes be a bit leaky and reveal states of itself we had not expected. But I would not want to build a philosophy on this, as Rupert Sheldrake did, formerly of Clare College, Cambridge, the inventor of morphing resonance, whose name no serious scientist would nowadays even mention. But I would like to add that Nicholas did mention. So.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, darling.
You didn't mention that you don't remember seeing her. I don't.
I don't, but I remember being told that I remembered seeing her.
Well, I still see it very, very clearly. So there you are. I saw it for us both. But no, you said there she is.
Yeah,
anyway.
two C's or something. There's a phrase, isn't there?
2 C's, but 3 don't.
Yeah.
That's what our neighbor Rosie, Irish neighbor Rosie said.
Yeah.
That's why you, Arabella, didn't see, or Faye didn't see the ghost in the kitchen at Wiltshire Radio.
But I did, and Rosie
You
did.
did.
Yeah, I
and
was a
Rosie
child.
did.
Yeah.
But Faye didn't.
Time to tell cats.
We've got one last reading to go from Norman, who will just again help us end on a sobering note. Dear Norman.
Hi everyone. And hooray for everything about this call. Thank you. Okay, intimations of mortality. Despite the ubiquity of war during the early years of my life, despite the nightly bangs and whistles going on in the darkness around our house, despite the V1 doodlebug, which one summer afternoon hissed down our suburban street in Weybridge and exploded with an enormous bang in the cutting outside the station, my sister and I had very little perception of death at that age. Indeed, my first direct intuition of the potential mortality of adults only really came about on our next move to a big house at Chellaston, a village on the outskirts of Derby. There, one bright morning, Nursey was walking down the broad staircase in her elegant Norland nanny costume, starched white cap, pink and white striped dress, blue cape, pocket watch on a strap, when she slipped slightly on a step, exhaled sharply in shock, and blew out her false teeth, which, despite her attempts to catch them, clattered on the polished stairs. The adults in my fortunate life had, up to that point, always seemed so integral, so solid, so permanent. Nursey's teeth were the first to tell me that life was a different story. Finn.
Darling Norman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dad, what's it been like for you to hear some of these stories come back to you?
Sorry?
What's it been like for you to hear some of these stories come back to
I've
you?
been rather moved, I'm astonished to say. I laughed when I told them, but some of them are more melancholy than I thought. Anyway, I'm so grateful to you all for taking the trouble to be there, to read them and to listen. And you really are my first readership. It's wonderful. Oh, I should say I have one reader before all of you, which was Katie, sister-in-law Katie Turner. She rang up with a review 2 days ago. positive.
Brilliant. I should think so.
And I'm very, very flattered that Vancouver should have woken up for this event as well. Bless you, my dear. And see, I hope you'll send some more of your designs. I'm missing them.
Not at all. And I have some notes for you, so we'll follow up.
Thank you, particularly the quantum physics aspect of it all.
So I would like to invite you to raise a glass for us all, Dad and Joanna. You happen to have a bottle of
We just happen to have a bottle of something.
So I'd invite everyone to sort of take a glass of water or whatever you might have that's stronger, and join us in congratulating you, darling Dad, and thanking all the team, particularly dear Joe Charrington, for making it all, so just being the catalyst, but everyone who's been involved, and darling Joanna for being forever being the rock that supports us all. We love you very much. Congratulations, darling Dad.
Well, bless you all.
Yes, cheers, and good luck for everyone, and good health, and well done. And Arabella, well done for doing all the leadership in it.
This is just volume 1.
This is just volume 1, and I hope everyone noted that already at least 2 or if not 3 amounts of text already dictated and in the bag, so we'll look forward. Is there anyone who has a question or a comment, anything that they would like to share as before we draw to a close? Lucia, thank you. Yes, well, give me a wave and then I'll know that you've got something to say. So Lucia.
I have 2 questions. The first is, can we expect a volume 2? And the second is, what advice do you have for an aspiring author who may also be your granddaughter?
Well, I think you write much better than me. You have an extraordinary gift of words. So I shall just wait to see. With high expectation. I remember that your essays, when you wrote them at school, were far too adult for your English masters and English teachers. So I've always rested in great hope that apart from doing brilliant things with your coding brain, you would do brilliant things with your verbal brain as well. And you've given me 1 or 2 hints, and I look forward to more of it coming.
Thank you so much.
Lovely, Dad. And Felicity, you gave a wave.
Yes, Nicholas, those were such lovely stories. And I just marvel at your memory. And I wondered what your earliest memory is.
Oh, well, coming out in the snow at Leamington Spa in 1940.
So how old were you then?
2.
Oh.
And I also remember British Army armored vehicles going through Coventry on their way through Leamington Spa on their way to France. And I remember at the same time being taken down to Leamington Spa pump rooms by my nanny, pushed in the pram, and sort of ogled over by the 3, to me, immensely withered old ladies who played who formed the violin trio at tea time in the afternoon. Must all have been in their 20s. Yes, and then quite a long book. Oh, and the other thing actually I do remember is looking into the cot where my newly born sister Liz had been positioned, and I looked down into the cot, and she looked up at me, and she saw that there was someone there who'd got there before her, and she opened her mouth and she bawled, poor old Liz, with dismay, absolute dismay that I got there first. And she never totally forgave me, I think. But we had some wonderful times together all the same.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dad. I've got a question from Sarah.
Sarah.
Morgan.
Mr. Tresilian.
Mrs. Morgan.
Quite a dirty mind, sir. Shockingly. My question is, Steve Jobs once gave a talk at a commencement at Stanford, I think, about looking back on his life and the dots all connecting and making sense. When you look back on your life, do the dots connect in a way that makes sense to you?
I think only in the sense that I said at the beginning, I think I've just been extraordinarily lucky. I've lived with people who I've loved and who've loved me. I've lived in a time of expansion of the world. And that just kept pushing dots into, they don't have to be joined up. That just kept pushing images, which are still here in my head. I see everything visually. All of the, I see that fly flying into the airplane and flying out again and so forth. And I don't have a good memory for words, for what people said in the main, but I do have a visual memory. So all these are supported on visual things, on visual images. All of them quite separate, but eventually, if we all hang on long enough, it'll be in the life story, and it will sort of hang together in a way that it doesn't yet. But I don't know whether anything should be expected of a life to hang together too well. I mean, life is life after all, and happens in a world which is a world after all. So a certain amount of discontinuity and disconnection is very much par for the course. But I do think I have fundamentally a rather pure mind.
It's so good to hear you, and what a great answer. Thank you.
Lovely to hear you too.
Thank you, darling Sarah. Well, I think that is all from everyone. Susanna.
Vivi.
And Vivi. Well, Vivi, I think, is clapping.
Bless you,
or
Vivi.
Did you,
yes,
Vivi, did you have a
clapping.
comment? You're clapping.
No, I'm clapping.
Thank you very much. A clap from Vivi is worth more than a clap from most people. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
The Danish clap. We know the Danes are serious.
And thank you to you, Vivi, too, for everything you've done to sort of help with communications around the project too.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
No problem.
And Susanna.
Have I got the microphone? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So just one quick question that came to me after Sarah's brilliant question, which is that you talk about when you're talking about art history, you talk about periods of kind of fast growth and slower, and it's sort of I can't remember the exact term, the pools and rapids, as it were, that you see across evolution. Have you seen that with your own life? Like, are you able to use that as a microcosm for that?
Well, it's very interesting you should say that, because I think I taught all of you driving on the motorway with the metaphor of pools and rapids.
Yeah, still use it.
Still use it, good. No, I think I will try and apply it. I think I've learned something from your asking that question, so I'll see. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to hearing the results. Thanks.
This has been, this has been both pool and rapid.
It's been pool and rapid. Well, with immaculate broadcasters' timing and precision, we are just a mere minute over. Darling Dad, many congratulations.
Bless you all, and thank you so much for being at our Festschrift. The word just come to me.
I will close the recording here and then let people take their leave, and we can open it up if people would like to chat. So let me just press stop there.
Wonderful.